and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers on this, our 5th anniversary show. Welcome to this special day.
Well, happy anniversary to you.
Never thought we'd make it.
No, we started on a very appropriate day for us. We started on April Fool's Day 5 years ago, and sure enough, we fooled people for 5 years, and we're still on. But it's mainly because of the good guests we have, such as the guests we have today.
Absolutely. Tell us about today's show.
Well, today we're going to be talking about a real success story. So often we have shows where we're talking about just a problem and a possible solution. This is a follow-up show to a subject we talked about a couple of years ago, or about a year ago, on the Fit Kids Coalition, and how our young people needed to improve their activity and their fitness. And we have some people that are going to come on today and tell us that in fact that has happened, and in fact it has been evaluated, and Oklahoma kids are doing much better today than they were just a short time ago. So it's a success story we're going to hear about today, not another problem.
It's easy to identify the problem.
It's
more difficult to start the road to success, and I'm glad we're doing this show. It's going to be interesting.
We've got two of the problem solvers with us.
And we will get to it. You're watching The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers will be right back.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
I know you guys said I'd save with Cox Digital Telephone. Well, my bill came and... Could this be right?
You may be surprised how much you save with Cox Digital Telephone. That's why over 1.5 million people have switched.
So this really is a total? Lovely. Because I think I found a good use for the savings.
With Cox, there's no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The only surprise is there's no surprise at all.
Your slice of Cardinals heaven can be found on the Cox channel all season long.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guests.
We're very pleased to have two return guests with us today. Across the table from me is Ann Roberts. Ann is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy. She's a graduate of the University of Oklahoma, and she's on the adjunct faculty at St. Gregory's University. She's recently been appointed to the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority. She has received a number of national and local awards for her advocacy on behalf of children, and we welcome you back.
Glad to be here, thanks.
On my left is Stanley Hupfeld. Stanley is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the INTEGRIS Health System. That includes 15 hospitals, about 10,000 employees, and about 1,600 hospital beds. Quite an undertaking to be in charge of. He is an undergraduate at the University of Texas, where he played on the national championship football team, but we can overlook that. He got his master's degree from Trinity University. He's a member of the board of directors of the American Hospital Association, and like Ann, he serves on numerous civic boards and agencies and has received a number of awards. He's coming back for another appearance on The Verdict, and we welcome you back.
Appreciate it.
Stan, the Fit Kids Coalition, give us an overview.
The Fit Kids Coalition started about 3.5 years ago, and we began to hear from our pediatricians that they were beginning to see preteens and teenagers
with type 2 diabetes and increasing levels of obesity. Type 2 diabetes is a diabetes normally thought for people our age. As a matter of fact, in textbooks, you cannot find it defined in population that young. So something was going on here, and it was clearly, when you peeled the onion back, it was clearly because of lack of exercise and dietary habits. And so we started the Fit Kids Coalition with individuals from across the state, all who have an interest in the problem, as you would expect, dietitians, professionals, physicians, folks that are involved like Ann in child advocacy issues. And we said, what can we do about this problem? And we focused initially on legislation, because that was a way to bring the problem to the forefront. It was a way to focus people's attention on it. And so we've been at it for 3 years, and we've had great success. I'm very proud of the Fit Kids Coalition. It's a perfect example of how a public advocacy group can be formed from nothing, can gain some momentum, can get some funding, can bring some real debate to the subject, and then ultimately have some good come out of it, which is raising public awareness. And we've made some significant changes in state laws.
And information, opinions on this, on the Fit Kids Coalition, where do you stand?
Well, I was just thrilled when Mr. Hupfeld called and asked me to help out with this effort. And in fact, now my organization houses it and does the administration of it. When you look at issues that impact absolutely every child in this state, Fit Kids encompasses all of those. Parents are concerned, pediatricians are concerned, schools are concerned, and so it was a delight to pull all those people together, as Mr. Hupfeld said, raising awareness about the issue and then tackling something that we could really get our hands around and make a difference.
Are you getting good feedback from the legislature?
Oh yes, as Mr. Hupfeld said, about 3 years ago we took our turn from the Centers for Disease Control, who had outlined a 5-point strategy to help states understand how to reduce obesity. And we've tackled those first two, getting junk food out of schools and tackling that sedentary lifestyle by reinstating physical education in schools. This year we're coming along to look at the next step, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Well, let's jump right in.
Jump right in, okay.
Let's talk about your legislative initiatives. What are you trying to advocate for the legislature to do?
Well, the third rung of that 5-point approach from the CDC is getting kids to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, every parent will say, well, if you can figure out that, let me know. But so we looked at the statistics and we're frankly appalled to find, would you believe Oklahoma is dead last? 15% of our population only eats the recommended 5 fruits and vegetable servings a day. And I am not familiar with farms and whatnot, so I really didn't know how to tackle this. So we brought some new partners to the table. The Kerr Center for Sustainable Agriculture and the Food Policy Council, which talked about a way to bring locally grown, fresh, high-quality produce from the farmers to the schools, because they had created, albeit on a small scale, this farm-to-school program. And so we are going to our legislature this year to expand that to make it available statewide.
What else are you doing? Anything? You got any other measures out there?
Oh gosh, yes. And these are the kinds of ones that are a little bit controversial. You might recall a couple of years ago, one of our first things that we did was to create local health committees in each school site. And this provided a place at the table for the parents, the professionals, and school personnel to get together and assess what's going on their school campuses. And it was alarming for some of those parents to find out we don't have fresh fruits and vegetables, or we don't have adequate PE, or we don't have a variety of things to help the kids. So those committees have been up and running. However, what we failed to do back then when we got them established was to provide resources for them. So this year we've come back with a Senate bill to provide some resources, basically an online checklist for those committees to use to help them assess what's going on their school campus.
Stan, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that we've determined in this, and I personally learned this lesson because, as you may know, we operate a charter school. And what's clear to me in the difference in schools is mainly driven by expectations, particularly parent expectations. And one of the reasons our little school, when we took it over, was so poor in its performance is that the expectations were so low. And one of the things that we're doing with this, the reason I think that the Fit Kids committees in each of these schools are so important is because it raises the level of parents' expectation and involvement. All of a sudden, they begin to ask questions like, what are we serving in our cafeteria, and why? And what are we serving in our vending machines, and why? And why can't our kids have more physical education? It's that kind of involvement that makes huge changes.
Let me ask a really uninformed question. The menu in an Oklahoma City School District cafeteria, is that something that's district-wide determined, or is that school by school determined?
I think they have some variability in what they serve, but they obviously have consistency in terms of buying practices. But the individual dietitians or the food supervisor can determine it. The issue on the fresh foods, why that was so important, is because historically schools, for expense reasons, often have relied on canned goods and canned produce and canned vegetables. And so the ability to put more fresh produce in the schools is very important. And then, of course, they had to kind of step up in terms of storage capacity and preparation and all those kinds of things. The third item, the third of our trilogy of experiences and bills this year, has to do with fitness testing. The thing we began to ask ourselves is, at the end of the day, with everything we're trying to do, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how are we going to know any of it's successful? How are we going to, what works and what doesn't work? And you don't know that unless you have a database, unless you can start, you know where you're starting now, and you can compare it where you are in a few years. And so the third piece, and frankly maybe the most controversial piece, is this business of fitness testing. And a lot of people were uneasy with this at first because what's the exposure? Are we going to embarrass anybody and those kinds of things? And will my individual rights be somehow violated? So we've gone to great lengths to ensure confidentiality. But the bill will require is some examples and some trials about testing kids in lower grades for certain elements of fitness, including body mass index, which can be very controversial. Now that will all be part of the database. It will not be released publicly. Parents will have access to the information only if they request it. It will not be broadcast anywhere else. And so we will build over time a very rich database that will allow us to tell how are our kids in Oklahoma doing.
That sounds good. Yeah. We're going to get back more on this subject involving children and nutrition and fitness and all of the accompanying issues when we return on The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. R.S.M. McGladrey. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. R.S.M. McGladrey. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
As someone who works in Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry, I know how hard we're working to meet our current energy needs. But there are a few things all of us can do to reduce the amount of energy we use, starting right around the house, like installing a $20 programmable thermostat and turning it down, because each degree above 68 can increase a bill by as much as 3%. It's amazing how putting a little effort in can keep a lot of energy from getting out. For more energy-saving ideas, visit oerb.com.
Hi, honey. You've got to check this out.
What? What are we listening to?
I had digital phone service installed today.
It sounds just like before.
I know, but it's going to save us a ton of money.
With Cox Digital Telephone, you'll save big every month. Keep your same phone number and get your favorite calling features. Just pay less.
That does sound good.
You should hear the upstairs phone.
¿Eres tú?
There you go. Cox Communications está buscando empleados entusiásticos y motivados.
Disfruta de nuestros beneficios, pago competitivo, grandes ventajas y oportunidades para el adelante.
Si desea hacer una diferencia,
tenemos un lugar para usted aquí con Cox Communications.
Visítanos en la internet o llame para ver qué oportunidades tenemos para usted aquí en Cox.
¿Eres tú?
Cox Communications está orgulloso de ofrecer igualdad de empleos.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and our guest, Ann Roberts and Stan Hupfeld. I want to talk about a grade that the state of Oklahoma received for the fitness and the well-being of its children, and that was an F, not the kind of grade we were looking for. What can you tell us about the grade and where we're headed?
Well, there's a national organization that does a scorecard every year, started 2 or 3 years ago, and when they started, Oklahoma was, again, dead last. We had an F in our efforts to reduce childhood obesity. And after 2 years of working with the Fit Kids Coalition, we stepped up to the plate, we got the legislature involved and the parents involved, and by golly, now we are in one of the top 12 states in our efforts to reduce childhood obesity.
Are any of the other top 12 states surrounding states, are they close to Oklahoma?
I don't know the answer to that, I'm so sorry.
What kind of assessment did they make to give these grades?
Right. This was an assessment of the efforts involved, not the actual, as Stan said, we don't have results. We don't have a baseline to determine what's going on. But in fact, one of the things that's important about fitness testing that we mentioned before is the numbers that we have now. The CDC will report that Oklahoma has an obesity rate in children of about 15%. Well, the same thing they said was true of Arkansas about 3 years ago. But when Arkansas instituted fitness testing, lo and behold, they had more than 40% in obesity rates. And so that's why we want to see right here in Oklahoma what's really going on.
And you know, you're very interested in economic development.
Oh gosh.
And I think you can make a real case that this is, as much as it is a health issue, it's an economic issue. Because if in fact these numbers are not changed, we will continue, as we are now, to graduate people into our workforce with chronic diseases, usually reserved for people our age. And that's an extraordinary burden. And so any state that can change those numbers and graduate a much healthier workforce economically will be much better off.
Well, you know, in visiting with other mayors around the country and discussing issues in cities, one thing always comes to light. The number one issue in every community is healthcare. And it's not necessarily something that city government is typically dealing with, but it's something we deal with on a secondary basis every single day with our employee costs, with the workforce in our communities, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better, at least from a cost standpoint.
No, you're right.
Well, Mayor and Ann and Stan, as you may choose to respond, I am aware generally that there's a Mayor's Fitness Challenge.
Yes.
And so what can you tell us about that?
Well, it started in the mayor's office in Tulsa, and really a good idea because as mayors, what we see is a lot of efforts out there to try to improve physical fitness and to try to live a more healthy lifestyle. But necessarily, it's difficult to see a clearinghouse in which all of these elements and everybody else can touch base. And maybe you're interested in getting involved, or maybe you need more information about nutrition, but you don't necessarily know where to go. Maybe you're interested in starting a running program, but you don't know where to go. And so we started a website, mayorsfitnesschallenge.com, to try to serve as a clearinghouse where people could come there and get information and then link up to all of the efforts that are going on in the community.
Indeed. And I had the opportunity to brag on our state with Mayor Cornett up in Washington, D.C. at the mayor's winter meeting. And they gathered the folks who were on the health committees for the mayors, and we had that opportunity. They were very interested in how we did this, and I got to share our story, and it was just a phenomenal experience.
Well, we're up to a B now.
Mm-hmm.
Should we be satisfied?
Oh, heavens no. Because that just determines the efforts. Now we need to turn our attention to really, where the rubber meets the road. Can we get kids more active? Can we get them eating more healthily? And I think that's what this legislation this year is all about.
And clearly this is not just a school problem. Frankly, we've been a little criticized because it appears that we're concentrating on schools. And we started with schools because that was the obvious place to start. And our attitude was, this is a huge problem, it's a societal problem, but our schools shouldn't be making a bad problem worse. And we weren't sure that they weren't. But we're beginning to branch out now. We will continue to focus on legislation and try to make changes there. But for instance, we've started a program that focuses from a media standpoint on Together at the Table, it's called. And it stresses the importance of families eating together and gives tips to the parents about good, healthy dietary habits for their children. And so we will take the impetus and, if you will, the notoriety that we've achieved, and then gradually move into other areas and enlarge that arena that we're in.
What about, we're up to a grade of a B. I'm kind of hung up on this B, I guess. We're up to a grade of a B on our efforts. What do we have to do to raise that grade more? What kind of change in our efforts do we have to make to raise that to a higher grade yet?
Well, when we look, I love going online and seeing what other states are doing. For instance, the state of California tests all of their kids, K through 12, and they put in requiring PE in all the grades. And so we're a long way from that. In Oklahoma, we only require PE, which is what we got done last year, from grades K through 5. Now, obviously, best practices says, medical practices says kids need to exercise every day. Now, we have to be sensitive to the scheduling for superintendents and principals with their kiddos. And so I would love for us to be able to find a way to provide more resources to schools so they could expand on those programs.
Stan, let me ask you just a question in general about the healthcare industry and acute care versus wellness. It seems like I see a definite trend toward healthcare institutions like yours getting more involved in the everyday lives of people and saying, hey, don't just call us when you're sick. Let's be involved from a continuous basis and let's try to make people healthier and have a healthier society in general.
Well, you're very correct. Most hospitals like ours have a mission that says that we want to improve people's health. And if you really dig deep in that, what you find is that we're all about the absence of health. We're about what happens when things go wrong, and we're there to try to fix it. So the flip side of it, and really the more important side, is how can we prevent that? And so organizations like ours are beginning to have a real focus on wellness, but it isn't easy. There's no magic bullets out there. We didn't get into this situation easily. We won't get ourselves out of it easily. It is about changing mindset. And the proof, the demonstrating healthy habits and exercise takes a long, long time to be able to demonstrate that if you invest $1 here, you're going to get $1 return down the road.
I'm glad you brought that up because it does all come back to money to a certain extent. Can you convince the insurance companies that, hey, if you do this, you'll have fewer problems down the line? Is that an easy sell?
No, it's not, because actuarially it's hard for them to determine what their risks are, and insurance is about risk, by the way. So historically, no. And in this country, not only insurance, but our government programs as well. I mean, if you look at the fact that we will pay for a mother with no prenatal care, a teenage mother with no prenatal care, come into one of our hospitals, have a distressed baby, and we will spend, as a society, hundreds of thousands of dollars for that child in a neonatal intensive care unit for days and weeks and months on end. We will spend nothing in order to get that one good prenatal care. So, we haven't really figured out where the start is. So we do have to rearrange our whole priorities.
And what do you see coming 5 years from now? Let me ask you a little different way. When at least I was growing up, we had mandatory physical education up, I think, all the way through high school, maybe not, but certainly through junior high or middle school. We've gone from that to not having it at all, and now the pendulum's swinging back. Right. Do you think we will get back to the point where it goes higher?
And about 15 seconds is all we got left.
Well, I hope so. I read an article just this morning that gives us more ammunition. I know there's a lot of problems with ADHD right now, and they're saying having those kids exercise helps them concentrate better in the classroom. So I think that the pendulum is swinging and that people are realizing the efficacy of getting kids moving so they can concentrate better in school.
Well, it's swinging because you all are pushing it.
Yes.
That's real.
Ann Roberts is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy. Stan Hupfeld runs INTEGRIS medical centers all across the state of Oklahoma. Thank you both for coming in and being on The Verdict.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good work.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. a place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Cox Channel. More sports. More fans. More cheerleaders. More fun. Nobody does more local sports, and nobody does it better.
Here's the pitch. Line drive on it. The Cardinals won the pennant. The Cardinals win. That's a winner. A World Series winner for the Cardinals. Oh, an unbelievable catch. Swing and a miss. Get up, baby. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Home run.
Your slice of Cardinals heaven can be found on the Cox Channel all season long.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and wrapping up a show on children and fitness and wellness and nutrition and a lot of interesting aspects that shows that we are addressing a serious issue.
Well, it certainly does, and it shows that these people who are dealing with it are making some progress. By the way, speaking of making progress, thanks for a good 5 years, and let's hope we have another 5 more to come at least.
If you just joined us, this is our 5th anniversary show on The Verdict. Thank you for letting it be on the air so long. We'd love to have a lot of more years coming up.
Yeah, one final personal note, congratulations to you on your fine victory as mayor. It was wonderful, but I'm sure glad you're back.
I'm sure my association with you is worth a lot of points.
One way or the other.
Yes, some website information, oica.org and theverdict.tv. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.